I just got here myself, so I'm not sure why I'm already welcoming people. But today we're reading The Way to Wealth by Benjamin Franklin, and we're going to be doing some more readings just to keep our mind attuned and for the mental acuity benefits that come with reading. This is a very short book. It's practically a pamphlet, so we're going to get through this entirely today. About this book. Let's read the publisher's note first. This new edition of Benjamin Franklin's The Way to Wealth draws upon the authoritative and widely printed editions published in London in 1810 by W. and T. Darton. The original images from the timeless publications have been recovered and placed within this new text, bringing the original writings of Benjamin Franklin fully into their historical context. For further authenticity, the text, including archaisms, has been preserved as Franklin wrote it. Archaisms is just like archaic things, like things that would not be written today. About this book, the saying introduced and promoted by Benjamin Franklin in this book promote a good work ethic and wise attitude to life and wealth. The aphorisms and lessons within this short text are consistent with the life of Franklin, whose multifaceted career spanned the fields of inventing, public service, activism, diplomacy, and sciences. Rather than speak the words directly, Franklin draws upon a character, Poor Richard, as a surrogate person who acts upon his lessons by following his advice herein. Richard is no longer so poor and has begun to accumulate wealth thanks to being responsible and diligent in both work and leisure, combined with frugality. The words exemplify the Protestant work ethics for which Franklin would become recognized posthumously by economic thinkers such as Max Weber. Much of his wisdom herein is timeless and imbued by life experience of the founding father himself. Despite the archaic imagery and wording, it is possible to gain insight and inspiration and work from this book even today. Were such a text updated and authorized for the modern day, we might refer to it as something of a self-help guide. To Franklin, however, these words were simply good sense. Franklin's Way to Wealth or Poor Richard Improves. So these are the pictures available with this. And to the left, I'm streaming on a dog training channel. So if anyone has any dog training questions at all, feel free to ask them and I'll just chime in. Okay, the original introduction. Dr. Franklin, wishing to collect into one piece all the sayings upon the following subjects, which he had dropped in the course of publishing the almanacs called Poor Richard, introduces Father Abraham for this purpose. Hence it is Poor Richard is so often quoted in that in the present title he is said to be improved. Notwithstanding the stroke of humor in this concluding paragraph of this address, Poor Richard's and Father Abraham have proved in America that they are no common preachers. And shall we, brother Englishmen, refuse good sense and saving knowledge because it comes from the other side of the water? Hello, Jellyfish Jewelry. Thank you for tuning in. The Way to Wealth. Courteous reader, I have heard that nothing gives an author so great pleasure as to find his works respectfully quoted by others. Judge then how much I must have been gratified by an incident I am going to relate to you. I stopped my horse lately where a great number of people were collected at an auction of merchant goods. The hour of the sale not being come, they were conversing on the badness of the times, and one of the company called to plain, clean old man with white locks, Pray, Father Abraham, what think of you of the times? Will not those heavy taxes quite ruin the country? How shall we ever be able to pay them? What would you advise to us? Father Abraham stood up and replied, If you would have my advice, I will give it to you in short, for a word to the wise is enough. Thank you, gaming nerd. You're quite cool yourself. For a word to the wise is enough. As Poor Richard says, they joined in desiring him to speak his mind, and gathering round him, he proceeded as follows. Friends, say he, the taxes are indeed very heavy, And if those laid on by the government were only ones we had to pay, we might more easily discharge them. But we have many others, and much more grievous to some of us. We are taxed twice as much by our idleness, 3 times as much by our pride, and 4 times as much by our folly. And from these taxes the commissioner cannot ease or deliver us by allowing an abatement. However, let us hearken to good advice, and something may be done for us. God helps them that helps themselves, says Poor Richard. It would be thought a hard government that should tax its people 1/10 part of their time to be employed in it. I just want to chime in. So if someone were to take 100% of your wage, that would be akin to slavery, right? If someone were to take 100% of your working wage. I just asked you this question. At what percentage is it not? That's for you to decide. Service, but idleness taxes many of us much more. So just being lazy, being idle, taxes you much more, because money is not as finite as your time. Money is actually, they just keep printing it. Money printer go burr. Okay. Sloth, by bringing on diseases, absolutely shortens life. Where do I get my haircuts at? I haven't let anyone cut my hair since I've moved away from my mother. Sloth, like rust, consumes faster than labor wears. While the used key is always bright, but dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is stuff life is made of. As Poor Richard said, how much more is necessary? Do we spend in life? Do we spend in sleep, forgetting that the sleeping fox catches no poultry, and that there will be sleeping enough in the grave? Because time is finite. There's money circulates. Time, finite, doesn't circulate. If time be of all things the most precious, wasting time must be, Poor Richard says, the great prodigality, since, as he elsewhere tells us, lost time is never found again, and what we call time enough always proves little enough. Let us then up and be doing, and doing to the purpose, so by diligence shall we do more with less perplexity. Yeah. Sloth makes all things difficult, but industry all easy. And he that riseth late must trot out all day, and shall scarce overtake his business at night, while laziness travels so slowly that poverty soon overtakes him. Drive thy business, let not that drive thee. And early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's one of Benjamin Franklin's most famous quotes. The sun shone today, and I would not work today. Today it rains, and I cannot work. So here are some more images from the book. So what signifies wishing and hoping for better times? We may make these times better if we bestir ourselves. Industry need not wish, and he that lives upon hope will die fasting. There are no gains without pains. Then help hands, for I have no lands. He's dropping bars here. Or if I have, they are smartly taxed. He that hath a trade hath an estate, and he that hath a calling hath an office of profit and honor. As Poor Richard says, but then the trade must be worked at, the calling well followed, or neither the estate nor the office will enable us to pay our taxes. If we are industrious, we shall never starve, for at working man's house hunger looks in, but dares not enter. English or Spanish? I'm speaking English right now. Nor will the bailiff or the constable enter, for industry pays debts, while despair increaseth them. What though you have found no treasure, nor has any rich relation left you a legacy? Diligence is the mother of good luck, and God gives all things to industry. Then plow deep while sluggards sleep, and you shall have corn to sell and keep. Bars. Work while it is called today, for you know not how much you may be hindered tomorrow. One today is worth 2 tomorrows, as Poor Richard says, and farther, never leave that till tomorrow which can be done today. ¿Dónde está bueno? I'm the only one in my family who doesn't speak Spanish, so I will translate that later and get back to you. Never leave that till tomorrow, which can be done today. If you were a servant, would you not be ashamed that a good master should catch you idle? Are you then your own master? Be ashamed to catch yourself idle? When there is so much to be done for yourself, your family, your country, and your king. Handle your tools without mittens. Remember that the cat in the glove catches no mice, as Poor Richard says. It is true, there is much to be done, and perhaps you are weak. Thank you for the Spanish lesson. ¿Dónde está bueno? That's a good thing to know. When I go to Mexico, I will know that phrase now because of you. Thank you. Bark to the future. If we have any dog training questions at all, anything related to dog behavior, chime in and we will get to that too. Are you then your own master? Be ashamed to catch yourself idle when there is so much to be done for yourself and your family? All right. The cat in the glove catches no mice, as Poor Richard says. It is true, there is much to be done, and perhaps you are weak-handed, but stick to it steadily, and you will see great effects. For constant dropping wears away stones, and by diligence and patience the mouse ate into the cable. And little strokes fell great oaks. It's an image of a cat and some mice. Methinks I hear some of you say, must a man afford himself no leisure? I will tell thee, my friend, what Poor Richard says. Employ thy time well, if thou meanest to gain leisure, and since thou art not sure of a minute, throw not away an hour. So if you can't guarantee the next minute, which you can't, don't throw away an hour. Leisure is time for doing something useful. This leisure the diligent man will obtain, but the lazy man never. So being idle and leisure are two different things. Leisure is earned. Idle is when you squander your time. A life for leisure and a life of laziness are two things. Many without labor would live by their wits only, but they break for want of stock, whereas industry gives comfort and plenty of respects. Fly pleasures and they will follow you. The diligent spinner has a large shift, and now I have a sheep and a cow. Everybody bids me good morrow. But with our industry, we must likewise be steady, settled, and careful, and oversee our own affairs with our own eyes, and not trust too much to others. For as Poor Richard says, I never saw an oft-removed tree, nor yet an oft-removed family, that throve so well as those that settled be. And again, 3 removes are as bad as a fire. And again, keep thy shop, and thy shop will keep thee. And again, if you would have your business done, go, if not send. And again. So there are archaisms in here where the English that they're speaking is a little bit different than the colloquial English of today. We have another image here. He that by plow would thrive, himself must either hold or drive. And again, the eye of the master will do more work than both his hands. And again, want of care does us more damage than want of knowledge. So us just wanting care rather than wanting knowledge is not perhaps the best use of our time. And again, not to oversee workmen is to leave them your purse open. So not overseeing those doing work for you is like leaving your wallet open. Some people would say you can have any relationship partner you want as long as your wallet or purse is open. Trusting too much to others. Care is the ruin of many, for in the affairs of the world men are saved, not by faith, but by the want of it. But a man's own care is profitable, for if you would have a faithful servant and one that you like, serve yourself. A little neglect may breed great mischief. For want of a nail the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe the horse was lost. And for want of a horse the rider was lost. Being overtaken and slain by the enemy, all for want of a little care about a horseshoe nail. So much for industry, my friends, and attention to one's own business. But to these we must add frugality. If we would make our industry more certainly successful, a man may, if he knows not how to save as he gets. So saving, the importance of it. Keep his nose all his life to the grindstone and die not worth a groat at last. A fat kitchen makes a lean will. And many estates are spent in the getting, since women for tea forsook spinning and knitting, and men for punch forsook hewing and splitting. If you would be wealthy, think of saving as well of getting. So saving and getting. And it's like a penny saved, penny earned adage. The Indies have not made Spain rich because her outgoes are greater than her incomes. So Spain at this time must have been dealing with some economic hardship despite their relations with the Indies. I'd imagine this is Indonesia. Despite their relationship with them, they were not able to be rich or wealthy or in abundance because they had expenses that were greater than their incomes. Away then with your expensive follies, and you will not then have so much cause to complain of hard times. Heavy taxes and chargeable families, for a woman and wine, game and deceit, make the wealth small and the want great. And farther, what maintains one vice would bring up two children. You may think, perhaps, that a little tea or a little punch now and then, diet a little more costly, clothes a little finer, and a little entertainment now and then can be no great matter, but remember, many a little makes it a mickle. Mickle. Beware of little expenses. Okay. Another imagery. A small leak will sink a great ship, as Poor Richard says. And again, who dainties love shall beggars prove. And moreover, fools make feasts, and wise men eat them. Here you are all got together for this sale of fineries and knickknacks. You call them goods, but if you do not take care, they will prove evils to some of you. This is the difference between assets and liabilities. Like, for example, a nice car at a certain point for most of its lifetime, first 20 years, it's a liability. It's going to keep going down in price or in value. Whatever price you pay for it, it's going to go down in value. But you get a car that is 20 to 30 years old and is now looking at becoming a classic. That is now closer to being an asset. But what we appreciate also matters too. Fools make feasts and wise men eat them. Here you are all get together to this sale of fineries and knickknacks. You call them goods, but if you do not take care of them, they will prove evils to some of you. You expect that they will be sold cheap, and perhaps they may be for less than they cost. But if you have no occasion for them, they must be dear to you. Must be dear to you, so you must appreciate them. What you appreciate, show interest to, that's of value too. But make sure it's something you really appreciate. But if you have no occasion for them, they must be dear to you. Remember what Poor Richard says. Buy what thou hast no need of, and ere long thou shalt sell thy necessaries. So that means sooner enough you buy what you don't need, and then eventually you will need to sell what you don't have. Remember what Poor Richard says. Buy what thou hast no need of, and long thou shalt thy sell thy necessaries. So, if you buy what you don't need, soon you have to sell what's necessary. And again, at a great pennyworth pauses a while. He means that perhaps the cheapness is apparent only and not real, or the bargain by straightening thee in thy business may do thee more harm than good. So if you are just buying it because it's a good deal, sometimes that might be of more harm than good. For in another place he says, many have been ruined by buying good pennyworths. And again, it is foolish to lay out money in a purchase of repentance. And yet this folly is practiced every day at auctions, for want of minding the almanac. Many a one, for the sake of finery on the back, have gone with a hungry belly and half starved their families. Silks and satins and scarlets and velvets put out the kitchen fire, as poor Richard says. So they had to use very fine things to put out the kitchen fire because they got them at good prices, but they didn't have the necessary things to put out the fire without using their finer things. Such would be paying off debts or something. These are not the necessaries of life. They can scarcely be called the conveniences, and yet only because they look pretty, how many want to have them. By these and other extravagancies, the genteel are reduced to poverty, and forced to borrow of those whom they formerly despised, and who, through industry and frugality, have maintained their standing, in which case it appears plainly that a plowman on his legs is higher than a gentleman on his knees. As poor Richard says, perhaps they have had a small estate he left them, which they knew not of getting rid of. They think it is day, and will never be night, that a little to be spent of is so much not worth minding. But always take out of the meal tub, and never putting in, soon comes to the bottom, as poor Richard says. And then, when the well is dry, they know the worth of the water. But this is thy might have known before. If they have taken this advice, if you would have known the value of the money, go and try to borrow some. If you need to know the value of money, go try to borrow some. You'll see how much you have to pay to borrow it. For he that goes borrowing goes a sorrowing, as poor Richard says, and indeed, so does he that tends to so much people, where he goes to get it in again. Poor Richard farther advises and says, fond pride of dress is sure a very curse. Ere fancy you consult your purse or wallet. That's another image. And again, proud is as loud a beggar as want, and great deal more saucy. When you have brought one fine thing, you must buy 10 more, that your appearance may be of all a piece. You ever seen somebody like get out of a? You ever seen somebody wearing a really nice suit, and then you see them walk back to a jalopy kind of vehicle? Some people might call it a more rundown vehicle, but they're wearing really nice clothes. And again, pride is as loud as the beggar in wants. Right? When you have bought one fine thing, you must buy 10 more, that your appearance may be of all a piece. But poor Richard says, it is easier to suppress the first desire than it is to satisfy all that follows it. And it is truly folly for the poor to ape the rich, as for the frog to swell, in order to equal the ox. So, vessels large may venture more, but little boats should keep near shore. So, if you have a large vessel, you can go further. But if you have a little boat, stay closer to shore. Don't go wandering for lavish gains. It is, however, a folly soon punished for, as poor Richard says, pride that dines on vanity sups on contempt. Pride breakfasted with plenty, dined with poverty, and supped with infamy. And after all that what uses is this pride of appearance, for which so much is risked, so much is suffered. It cannot promote health nor ease and pain. It makes no increase of merit in the person, and it creates envy. It hastens misfortune, and draws the eye of people that might rob you. What madness it must be to run in debt for these superfluities. That's a word that has to be based on superfluous. Superfluities. So superfluous of no matter, of no meaning. We are offered by the terms of the sale 6 months' credit, and that perhaps has induced some of us to attend it, because we cannot spare the ready money, and hope now be fine without it. But think of what you do when you run in debt. You give to another power over your liberty. If you cannot pay at the time, you will be ashamed to see your creditor, and you will be in fear when you speak to him. You will make poor, pitiful, sneaking excuses, and by decrease come to lose your veracity, and sink into base, downright lying. For the second vice is lying. The first is running in debt. As poor Richard says, and again, and to the same purpose, lying rides upon debt's back, whereas a free-born Englishman ought to not be ashamed nor afraid to see or speak to any living man. But poverty often deprives a man of all spirit and virtue. It is hard for an empty bag to stand upright. It literally is hard for an empty bag to stand upright. What would you think of that prince or that government who should issue an edict forbidding you to dress like a gentleman or gentlewoman on pain or imprisonment or servitude? Would you not say that you were free, have a right to dress as you please, and that such an edict would be a breach of your privileges, and such a government tyrannical? And yet you are about to put yourself under that tyranny when you run in debt for such dress. Your creditors have authority at his pleasure to deprive you of your liberty by confining you in gaol, G-A-O-L, gaol, first time seeing that word, for life, or by selling you for a servant. If you should not be able to pay him, when you have got your bargain, you may perhaps think little of payment. But as poor Richard says, creditors have better memories than debtors. Creditors are a superstitious sect, great observers of set days and times. The day comes round before you are aware, and the demand is made before you are prepared to satisfy it. Hold on. The day comes round before you are aware. The demand is made before you are prepared. He's dropping bars on you. Or satisfied. Or if you bear your debt in mind, the term which at first seems so long will, as it lessens, become extremely short. Time will seem to have added wings to his heels as well as his shoulders. Those have a short Lent who have owe money to be paid at Easter. At present, perhaps, you may think yourselves in thriving circumstances, and that you can bear a little extravagance without injury, but for age and want save while you may. No morning sun lasts a whole day. Gain may be temporary and uncertain, but ever while you live expense is constant and certain, and it is easier to build 2 chimneys rather than to keep one in fuel. As poor Richard says, rather go to bed supperless than rise in debt. Get what you can, and what you get, hold. 'Tis the stone will turn all your lead into gold, and when you have got the philosopher's stone, sure you will no longer complain of bad times, or difficulty of paying taxes. This doctrine, my friend, is reason and wisdom, but after all, do not depend too much upon your own industry and frugality and prudence, though excellent things, for they may all be blasted without the blessings of heaven. Therefore, ask that blessings humbly, and be not uncharitable to those that are present seem to want it, but comfort and help them. Remember, Job suffered and was afterward prosperous. And now to conclude, experience keeps a dear school, but fools will learn in no other. As poor Richard says, and scarce it is true, that for it is true. We may give advice, but we cannot give conduct. However, remember this: they that will not be consoled cannot be helped. And farther that, if you will not hear reason, she will surely rap your knuckles, as poor Richard says. Thus, the old gentleman ended his harangue. The people heard it and approved the doctrine, and immediately practiced the contrary. So they heard what he said and did the opposite. Just as if it had been a common sermon, for the auction opened, and they began to buy extravagantly. The good man had thoroughly studied my almanacs, and digested all I had dropped of those topics during the course of 25 years. The frequent mention he made of me must have tired anyone else, but my vanity was wonderfully delighted with it, though I was conscious that not a 10th part of the wisdom was my own. wonderfully delighted with it, though it was conscious that not a tenth part of the wisdom was of my own, which he ascribed to me, but rather the gleanings that I had made sense of all ages and nations. However, I resolved to be the better for the echo of it, and though I had at first determined to buy stuff for a new coat, I went away resolved to wear my old one a little longer. Reader, if thou wilt do the same, thy profit will be as great as mine, and I am as ever thine to serve thee. Richard Saunders, which was the pen name of Benjamin Franklin. And this is the last image of the book. Wow. So this book was actually published on February 16th, 2017, which just happens to be the birthday of my German Shepherd. That was the exact day she was born. What say you? We end this broadcast to the right of us. And what say you? We take a dog out and throw a ball around. That sound good? Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in over here. I hope you enjoyed The Way to Wealth with Benjamin Franklin. I am working on my diction and oratory skills. I was once a speech therapist student. I only took one class, but I took the techniques and ran with them. Here we have a dandelion tea, great for the heart. I shall be right back. Sir? Just sir? Just sir? Alright. We got a ball, and we're going out to go play with Siri. She loves to play with a ball. You might have seen some of my play with my other dog. And that's a different style of play than this dog is familiar with. She just likes to play with a ball. So this is Siri. We're gonna go out there and throw a baseball around. Come on, Siri. Girl. Hey, bring that bag here. Bring it. Here. 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 Thank you for tuning in. We're going to be doing more labs, more dog-orientated content, and more readings too. We'll read other books, some scripture, various scriptures, Torah, Quran, Bible. Good girl. All right, get one more throw. One more throw. All right. We'll be back to do some sparring with Luna. This is Siri. She likes to play with the ball. Luna likes to spar. Thank you for tuning in.